Hey guys, welcome to Boxing Squared for boxing news and views from around the internet. And another heavyweight news and notes mashup video today, starting with Dillian Whyte, who was warming up to the prospect of a rematch with Joseph Parker, who he beat in mid-2018. So see here on screen, Dillian Whyte to his social media posting, "I just want the buggiest fights at this stage in my career. Let's go, put hands on you once and we'll do it again." And that was in response to some comments that David Higgins, Joseph Parker's manager, had made to Sky Sports. And we'll go through those and then talk about this potential matchup, because long-time followers of the channel will know that I've said I never thought a rematch between these two would happen until Dillian Whyte lost. And now he has, so this firmly puts it back in play. And Joseph Parker does not have any commitments right now, and I'll repeat that, he has not signed to fight anyone at the moment, including Joyce. So he could take this fight. We'll come to that also, because Joyce, in the interim of a potential Joseph Parker fight later this year, has taken a fight for July. We'll cover that too. But Joseph Parker's manager, David Higgins, and Higgins did used to promote Joseph Parker. At the moment, he's moved into a managerial and advisory capacity. Unclear where Joseph Parker's going to go, because off contract at the moment. So Higgins says Joseph Parker is keeping in wonderful shape at home in New Zealand with his family. There are still ongoing discussions about his next fight move. The Joyce fight is still a live discussion. It is not contracted. There's talk of it for later September, and then there's always options. Joseph was showing me videos of the Dillian fight this very morning, and Joseph has wanted a rematch ever since. We've made it clear at all times we'd fight Dillian then or now. That stands now, because Joseph would love to fight Dillian Whyte. That would be a blockbuster pay-per-view. It was a war. It was the heavyweight fight of the year. It's really up to the Whyte camp, I think, to signal if they are willing to have that rematch. And he goes on to say there's no better time to have it, blah-de-blah-de-blah. Parker, an elite heavyweight. He's got unfinished business with Dillian Whyte. So to stop Dillian Whyte on worldwide TV would be a nice step back towards the heavyweight world title, which is every heavyweight's goal. So it just then kind of goes on to repeat some of effectively what was earlier in that story from Sky Sports. So this fight could definitely happen now. Whyte seemingly is looking around for money fights. You may recall, and here is the post, a few weeks back after his loss to Tyson Fury, he bumped into Anthony Joshua on the street and said, "Hey, let's have a rematch. Let's get a win and have a rematch. Let's get it on, settle the rivalry for once and for good." I mean, to be honest, I think Joshua settled that when he knocked out Dillian Whyte back at the end of 2015. And Whyte already had a chance to face Joshua in 2019. He didn't like the money. He had 3 belts available to fight for against Joshua at Wembley. Didn't want it. So I kind of think that that's been and gone. And do we really need to see that again? And you can make the argument for this fight as well, that is there such a demand for the rematch? There were a couple of things in that fight where obviously there was an accidental head clash where Parker was dropped from that, and obviously that sort of gave Dillian Whyte that round, and ultimately scorecards reasonably tight at the end. Dillian Whyte also was basically out on his feet in that 12th round, survived, got the win, and basically walked away and never really sort of said much about Joseph Parker since. So these guys, and both of them, Whyte's chasing money fights, and clearly David Higgins is doing the same for Parker. And this is part of the reason that the Joyce fight's not over the line. They're very difficult and hard negotiators. They want every last penny. And they're probably looking at this Whyte fight going, if we could get something like that arranged, it's a bigger fight monetary-wise than the Joyce fight. And I actually think Dillian Whyte, Joseph Parker is a better fight for Parker. I do think that that is an easier fight, and I say that relatively speaking, than Joyce. I think Joyce is a tougher cover because Parker is smaller than Joyce, has the physical disadvantages for the most part, apart from speed. I do think that's going to be a harder fight than Dillian Whyte, who I do think is maybe a bit shot-worn. He's starting to look a little bit, and that Tyson Fury fight, you can't read too much into it in terms of everything. Fury just completely nullified him. but I do think that Parker stands a very good chance to win that rematch. And obviously it was a pretty competitive fight for stretches in that first fight, ultimately Whyte getting the decision. So we'll move on, though, to Joe Joyce. So he's been confirmed by Frank Warren's Queensbury to be returning on the 2nd of July. He's on an undercard here. Joyce is saying, looking forward to getting back into the ring. No time for complacency, July 2nd at Wembley Arena. And Frank Warren's press release that he's put out about that, Joyce will be getting back into the ring against an established heavyweight contender as he closes in on a September clash with Joseph Parker and what will be a battle between number 1 and number 2 with the WBO. Following a layoff due to injury, the Juggernaut will return to the scene of his last fight, a 6th-round stoppage of Carlos Takam in July last year. So this will be a full year with Joyce having been out of the ring. So I think with this Parker fight not over the line, he needs some activity. And remember, Joyce is not a spring chicken. He's, 36, 37 years old now. He needs to be staying active as he pushes towards those bigger fights in the heavyweight division. But you would have noted there that press release, they're still pushing that Joyce and Parker is on for September. They're basically sort of running that line that this fight is over the line, that it is happening. Where we've just heard from David Higgins, it is not happening at this point. There is no contracted fight. Parker could very well go off and face someone like a Dillian Whyte. But I guess for Whyte and also for Parker, they're off contract at the moment. Where's that fight going to be? Would it be at Sky? Would someone like that pick it up? Would they look to reuse that pay-per-view platform, which they did for the first fight when they were still both with Matchroom? I don't know. It's sort of hard to say. But also you could maybe say Joseph Parker throwing out Dillian Whyte's name is also a negotiation tactic for the Joe Joyce fight to squeeze those extra dollars. Could be that as well. But I genuinely think Parker does want that Whyte rematch because probably makes more money. And especially with the history, the close fight the first time around, you could certainly they could certainly probably do quite well. I don't know if they would do as well as that first fight. I think Whyte coming off a loss to Tyson Fury and looking pretty average in the process, and Parker hasn't exactly set the world on fire in recent years. He did have a good comeback fight against, or should I say rematch fight against Derek Chisora, beat him up, but again failed to stop him. But in terms of Joyce, they say that he's going to be facing a heavyweight contender in July in his comeback fight, his tune-up fight, I should say. Yeah, I very much doubt it's going to be anyone we really want to see him in against. I mean, you've had the likes of Mahmoud Shah calling out Joe Joyce, and but then again, there's not too many guys that want to voluntarily jump in with him unless they're going to get horrifically overpaid. And certainly Joseph Parker seems to be trying to get the pound of flesh out of Frank Warren. But Joyce and Parker, not a lock. Parker, Whyte, who knows? I mean, seemingly Parker is on the verge of getting a decent fight one way or the other. Moving on to Otto Wallin, the Swedish heavyweight. He has won a unanimous decision over Rydell Booker. So this was in Detroit, a Dimitri Salita show. I was unable to watch that in any way, shape or form, so I can only go off what the press release sort of says here. Scores 99-91, 100-90 and 99-91. So the press release of Wallin says, I want to say thanks to everyone who came out. It's my fight time in Michigan and I really enjoyed it. Tyson Fury forgot about me. He doesn't want to fight, but I'm still going to be the next heavyweight champion from Sweden, no matter who I have to beat. So seemingly that was a one-sided fight with those scorecards. I don't know why Otto Wallin is bringing up Tyson Fury. I mean, just give it a rest. I mean, you fought to him, in 2019, lost to him. Ultimately, besides the success with the, cutting open Fury's eye with some punches, that was still a relatively lopsided fight in terms of Tyson Fury just changed his strategy and won it convincingly enough. The reason Tyson Fury's not talking about Otto Wallin is because at the moment he's not considered as a factor in the heavyweight division. He's not a top 10 fighter in my view, and he's not facing the sort of opposition that puts him into those fights where you go, we have to see these guys fight. He's well off a Tyson Fury fight, no matter what he and his promoter are saying. And Dimitri Salita has spoken about Otto Wallin would be well up for a fight against Deontay Wilder, if Wilder is returning. But at the moment, he's got a ranking in the WBC. This fight here, Rydell Booker, does seemingly sort of smack of trying to solidify his rankings within the WBC. But at the moment, it's kind of Otto Wallin, who needs him. But also, if you're coming off fights against guys like Kamil Sokolowski and Rydell Booker, not exactly doing yourself any favours, are you? And he didn't look great in the fight against Sokolowski. He looked very uninterested. And you've got a performance here against a 40-something Rydell Booker, who you've taken to a decision 10 rounds. The 10 rounds probably good for the activity, but was it a dominant 10 rounds? It doesn't look like, at least from the scorecards, that he dropped him. Did he hurt him? I don't know. Haven't seen the fight. But yeah, it's not exactly a murderer's row at the moment with Wallin and his recent opposition. How can you build any buzz when you're fighting guys well below where people think you should be fighting? That's up to his promoter in the end. Another result, you've got Richard Larty getting stopped in the first round against Sergey Kuzmin in Russia. So the clip, I wasn't able to see the full fight, obviously it's only a round long, but there's a clip up on Twitter on Tim Boxeo's page. You can go check that out. And actually it was a punch that landed. He went down. Looked like he maybe could have got up, but Richard Larty's been sort of working on his acting, so I think maybe he's getting a little better. But it was a legitimate punch. Didn't look like a dive by Larty, but who knows? He could just be improving his game. But there was zero value in fighting guys like Richard Larty anymore. I mean, it was a nothing fight. I don't know why they even, people are even getting Larty in after his recent performances where he has been basically folding over at the first sign of trouble, or even voluntarily folding over in terms of the Eddie fight with a dive. And obviously the Fabio Wardley fight certainly has question marks over it as well. So Sergey Kuzmin, he gets a win. Richard Larty, whoopee. I mean, what does it mean? What are they doing with Sergey Kuzmin? Sergey Kuzmin, Otto Wallin. Sergey Kuzmin is good for rounds against pretty much a lot of guys. He's a maybe top 30, top 40 sort of guy at this point. He seemingly is going nowhere fast, but he can be a very durable opponent where you can get your rounds in, and you'll certainly be made to work hard for the win by a guy like Kuzmin. And actually, just going back to the Otto Wallin fight, so I'd filed this in the wrong place in my little sort of tabs that I got open. So Rydell Booker had, off that fight with Wallin, said, Detroit, my apologies to you all. I didn't get the win tonight versus a world-rated fighter. These guys can't beat me. I just got to get well-conditioned. I'm beating myself. Well, Rydell Booker at, 40, 41 years old, if he thinks that he can beat these guys, even if he is conditioned, I mean, I'm sorry, he's deluding himself here. Beaten widely and soundly on the cards. The conditioning hasn't been good for a long time, and that's up to him. He's been fighting out of condition, so he may, in a sense, be beating himself, but someone like an Otto Wallin was always going to beat Rydell Booker at this stage of Booker's career. He's well into his twilight of his career, picking up paychecks and often on short notice at this point. Richard Torrez, he will be returning to the ring on a top-ranked card July 15th. And it's interesting with the announcement of this, and I'll get to the press release. So Torrez says, ever since that cut in my pro debut, I've been counting the days until my next fight. I'm thankful to be fighting on ESPN and back in my home state. If you don't know why you should watch me, you will soon. And certainly that was a fun first fight that he had a few months ago, whenever it was. Went to war with the guy that he was fighting, and I think he is going to be a fun fighter. But the way that he fights, I think he's here for a good time, maybe not a long time. It's got to be fun watching him come up. But he was actually, quoted in that press release, whereas Stephan Shaw, who's returning on the same card, seemingly getting less shine. So he's returning on for an 8-round fight on that same card, currently 16-0. Shaw says it's going up, time to reign supreme. But if he's in an 8-rounder, probably not going to be in anything that we really want to see him in with. I still think that they should try to reignite or re-stand up that fight that was proposed with Jermaine Franklin. That would be a good fight. And Salita, with his fighters, he's not tied to any one promotional platform. Stephan Shaw and Jermaine Franklin, I still want to see that fight. I think those two guys are at a level where they need those stepping stone fights, and each other could be that stone for each other. But also interesting, they're really pushing the Olympians. Torrez, the silver medalist from Tokyo 2021, giving him a push, and Shaw seemingly a little bit in the background. But at least for Shaw, who's been so inactive in his career overall, at least he's going to be back in the ring so we can sort of see what he's got. But he needs a couple of really good step-up fights in his next few fights, and just these sort of 6 or 8 rounders that are against Neville Nobodies, he won't go anywhere with those. He's ready for better tests. We need to see him pushed at this point. And Dave Allen, he will be returning to the ring, saying, my next fight will be again in Newcastle and again at the Hilton Hotel July 23rd. Took the fight to give myself the push to get back in shape and get another win to get myself closer to back to the big fights. So Allen returning and seemingly to keep himself motivated and in shape, and people may have noted from his social media, he has obviously been training a lot of fighters, but in recent months he's been sort of piling on the pounds and recently tried to implement a regimen to try to sort of get that off, and this is obviously part of it. Will he actually get back to some bigger fights? I'm not convinced. It sort of seems like he's half in, half out, and if he's doing this partly for fitness as well, is his heart really in it? Someone's really going to have to sort of put up a wedge of money to overpay him to get him into anything meaningful. But at this point, is there too much value in facing Dave Allen? I think, his best days are gone, and certainly there's question marks about his health going forward should he continue to box. What do you make of it all? Drop a comment, loud and often, hit like, hit subscribe, follow me on Twitter, boxing_squared. I'm out.